Danella Burnett, welcome to the Story Engine podcast.
Kyle, I'm so excited to be here. Thank you so much for having me here today.
I am excited for you to be here because you have a brilliance that is very harmonious and synergistic with a lot of the work that I do. And I'd love the audience to hear that from you themselves first. Will you tell us a little bit about who you are and how you're showing up in the world today?
Great question. So who am I? I am a mother. I am a believer. I am a speaker strategist. I am an event producer. I am a living in the South, but love to travel entrepreneur who didn't mean to end up here, but I did. I've been doing this for a very long time. As far as event production, that I did mean to do. Started a very long time ago, have about 40 years in the industry, but I attended my own first personal development event in about 2004. And it was everything that I had done to that point: personal events, professional events, corporate events, nonprofit events, festivals, events from 25 to 250,000 people in my history, and events in this personal development space with speakers and enrollment and energy. To me, just brought it all together. And so started moving in this direction. I became a speaker myself in 2017 and using the stage to grow my business. And now we help speakers get out on more stages, find the stages where their audience is, how to maximize those stages, and then how to have their own stage profitably and impactfully.
There's so much to break into there. And one of the things that I'm super curious about that you hinted at was that you said something like you were a reluctant entrepreneur or unexpected entrepreneur. And somewhere along in this journey, you synergized it with your love for events. But what was the belief back then, back before, either about yourself or about business or the world, that kept you from entering into this place? Or what changed that allowed you to decide this was an entrepreneurial skill set?
Well, I grew up with a very entrepreneurial dad, but he was never really a successful entrepreneur. My dad was very much the looking for the pot of gold along every rainbow. And like many good Irishmen, there were a couple of cocktails that always seemed to get in the way from finding the leprechaun, liked a good beer every now and then. My grandfather had been an entrepreneur, but I really didn't know the word entrepreneur then. My grandfather was a business owner. He worked very hard in the poultry industry. He and a partner created plastic products that the poultry industry used. And I just knew my grandfather owned a business. That's really about all that I knew of him. Later in life, I realized what an amazing salesperson and entrepreneur that he was. And then I had this experience with my dad, and he didn't, he just always was looking for that next level of success. And so what I heard was, you go to school and you get a good job and you work for other people. And so I did. I worked for other people, great experiences. I think I always had a little bit of that entrepreneurial spirit to me. I would sometimes have the little side things, the little direct sales or something like that. But that was never going to be the primary focus. 2008. 2 years I'd been able to be a stay-at-home mom. My husband had a great job. We were very fortunate. I was a later in life mom. I was 38 when I had my daughter and 40 when I had my son. And I got to be a stay-at-home mom. And I thought, all this time working for other people, I get to just enjoy being a mom right now. Well, I did say it was 2008. And if your audience is able to think back to 2008, there was an upheaval for a lot of people. And there was an upheaval for us when my husband came home one day and said he'd been laid off. And there was nothing going on here in Atlanta. The construction industry was just decimated for a very long time. It actually would be 4 years before my husband went back to work. Wow. So we wrote checks out of savings. Not a great financial plan, especially when you've got a 6-month-old and a 2-year old, and you can't seem to get out of the Walmart for less than $100 before you even put like the first bit of food in the cart, between diapers and formula and wipes and all those things. So we knew we were on a path that this was not working, and I would likely, need to go back to work. And we were looking, and honestly, there wasn't a lot that made sense with 2 babies at home and what was going on in the economy. But I was looking, and I said to my husband, maybe I'll just go find a job bartending or waiting tables, like something where I can hustle and I can just get paid cash. And it'll make sense for me to leave you and leave the kids and, or occasionally get sitters. And he's trying to find odd jobs as well. And so on that path, I'm just trying to find a job, and nothing is coming together. And I go walking into the local Mellow Mushroom, and this young man, who to me looked to be about 14 years old, looked me up and down. I had more restaurant experience than he'd probably been alive at that point. And he kind of looked my 40-year-old self up and down, and, I got the big brush off.
Wow.
And so I went out to my car, and just in tears, I said, you know what, God, I don't understand. Like, I know that you're not going to leave me without a path, but like, I don't see it. And I call those neon sign moments when I ask God for the neon sign. Like, I've tried it to the best of my ability, and I'm like, I know there's something, but I'm not seeing it. Could you shine the neon sign on what I'm supposed to do next? Because I don't know. And I went into church that week, and I was telling my ladies about this kind of humiliating experience at the Mellow Mushroom. And one of the ladies says, Danella, you do so much around here, like helping with, Wednesday night suppers, and, you've catered, and you've got a culinary degree. Why don't you start a catering company out of the kitchen of the church here? I'm like, I don't think you can do that. Sure enough, if you go meet with the health department, and you meet with the trustees that can control the building, the health department deemed the kitchen a commercial kitchen and worthy of being sublet, and the trustees said, you take care of the equipment. So my entrepreneurial journey began in that kitchen with the blessing of some great folks who wished us well, and what I lovingly call my 3 employees, me, myself, and I. And I joined a networking group, and I started catering, and I started planning events. And that business that began in 2008 has grown to a global 7-figure supporting speakers, supporting events. And now I am certifiably unemployable by anyone else. It's definitely the entrepreneurial journey for me.
But do you still have your food handler's permit?
I actually do. I sold the catering company in 2017 because I wanted to take the business national and do more in the personal development space. But I do actually keep my food safety hand permit up to date.
That's incredible. What a fun journey of necessity, creating opportunities and perspectives for new ways of doing things. And I love both sharing the insights of your father and grandfather, and how there's something generational at play here, and moving forward with it. So congratulations in that. And now you help people get on one of the scariest places that people would least want to be in the world, and sometimes where people most want to be on the world at the same time. And this is the stage. And I want to start just by sharing some of my personal experience and understanding. And one of the biggest misunderstandings about the stage is that there's this whole group of people like yourself that have to plan these events, and it's hard work, or they have to run the podcasts, they have to edit things, they have to arrange all of their speakers, they have to do things. And then a lot of us as a speaker, we forget that these people have their own sets of needs, their own sets of desires, what success looks like for them. that largely goes, especially if they do their job well, unseen. And I think this is one of the biggest gaps in why it's actually difficult for people to get on stages, is because they are totally unaware that these people need to be talked to in their own kind of way and respected. And one of the biggest ways that I see that happening is in my inbox. Every single day, I will get emails from people saying, "Do you want to be, you want this person as a guest on their show? They'll be so great for your audience. They'll do this, they'll do that." And they always talk about my audience, but they never are like, "As you, a podcast host, this is a delightful person," or "Let me help you get it." It's not aware of me at all. And I'm curious, from your experience and your perspective, what is this not being aware of the meeting planner and their needs? What does that look like and shape up to in a lot of the experience that you work
Uh, what a question. Great question. Um, and I think one of the reasons why I have been so successful as a speaker and event host and supporting our clients and having the impactful events is because I've sat in all of those seats. And I don't think it's a, what you're talking about. I don't think it's an intentional,
with?
like, not seeing something. Like, people truly don't understand sometimes what has to come together to support an event, and how many people, and if it takes a village to raise a child, it takes an army, to put on a successful event. And there are certainly, and if you're doing it in person, then there's also the needs of the venue, and there may be needs of supporting vendors and speakers and supporting cast. So there are a lot of things at play, and the more you can understand what the needs are of each person, you're talking about the speaker understanding the needs of the event host. A lot of speakers don't even think about what are the goals of that podcast host or the goals of that event host. Sometimes one of the ways that we educate our speakers is so that they do understand that certain events are for the host to increase their enrollment. And while they want that speaker to have a good experience and get leads and also grow, it's built to grow the event host community. Sometimes an event might be to grow awareness in a cause or a mission, like a nonprofit event or an event that's about serving a community. And so it's not about growing, but it's about serving a community that's already built and already cohesive. Sometimes it could be about everybody, like shining a light on a particular group of people. Sometimes it could be to serve for continuing education. There's some industry events where it's serving the audience because the audience needs certification. They need a certain amount of training or content in order to stay in training mode. And so, yeah, understanding the nature of the event, whether the event is put on by an association or a university or somewhere in the educational sphere, or whether it's put on by an entrepreneur, or whether it's put on by an individual, all of those needs could be very, very different. And in order to step in successfully as a speaker, it is good to know what are the needs of the audience and what are the needs of the host. And then you're going to be a more successful speaker. You're going to get more out of that experience and contribute more, which is going to lead to more and more speaking opportunities. Because while it's a big industry, it's also a small industry. There's a lot of talk. When you come onto the stage as a diva, and it's maybe not quite an earned right to be a diva yet, that word's going to get out. If even going over in your time or being short in your time, how that impacts everything else going on. So it's interesting. And the more, as a speaker or an entrepreneur that's looking to use the stage to grow your business, the more you can know about the type of event that you're stepping into and how you can contribute on several levels, the more successful you'll be for sure.
Absolutely. So this goes to say there's so much more to being a great speaker than even when you're on the stage. One of my favorite things that I do, understanding and being aware of this, is I try to always have a question to ask when they call for questions and shares, because it feels really good. And every time I'll open up my question with, "Wow, these guys are awesome. They're doing so good. I love it." And because I know how much hard work is going into all of this, or just making a little bit easier compared to if you don't have these awarenesses of what the event's goal is and what the bigger picture is, and you just show up and talk for too long and then make your offer, you're very tone deaf. And it's very unlikely that, yeah, you'll get invited to that event. And like what you're saying, there's uh, no matter what industry you're in, there's going to be just a couple of places that word will get around, and there will be some upper limits. And this is also a lot of the times the best stages, the best podcasts, the best events that I've pursued have been multi-year relationships, carefully curated, and I've made the mistakes that I know I've done the things where I've been a little bit too enthusiastic about talking about my products at an event. And it's caused ripples and impacts, and word gets around faster than you can imagine. And so
Mm-hmm.
I've definitely felt the sting of this personally. And yeah, it could at least be avoided or understood by so much more people by understanding the meeting planners have their own needs and goals.
Well, I think a good rule of thumb
Mm-hmm.
as a speaker, when someone else is speaking or someone else's event, be the kind of audience that you'd like to be speaking in front of. I mean, that's just a really good rule of thumb. You know, be there, participate. When I speak, I always, virtual or in person, I enter that room early. I get a feel for what's going on. I mean, one, it's a good move as a speaker to maybe tie something back to the speaker who spoke before you, or tie something back to a question that was asked in the audience. Like having that kind of relevancy and letting the audience know that you are connected. It's a good move as a speaker. You'll seem more relevant and more interesting, but it's also just a good move to be participant, see what's going on, and you'll definitely endear yourself to the event host and the production team if you don't come in on two wheels just before you're supposed to speak. We like to see you and know that you're there in the room or in the Zoom long before you have to take the stage.
Yeah, that's that's great. One of the I love nerding out on this particular. This is a really understood area. Another thing that I think is really important is how do we make our first contact with somebody like this? Because, like I said in my email inbox, I've actually taken screenshots of some of them so bad, of like, "Hey, Kyle, I hear you serve entrepreneurs. Do you want to guest about residential water pumps?" And I was like, I was so stunned that I responded. And I was like, tell me how my audience of entrepreneurs would want to learn about these things. And they're just another boilerplate, water pumps for your house, this or that. It's stunning. And this is actually the bar of expectations that the higher the profile, the event, the quality doesn't really get better. It just, there's more volume of really terrible things like that. And
Yeah,
there's some
that's
creative ways that I have to, if I wanted to get somebody's attention. But do you have a few secrets that you would be willing to share, or strategies or tactics? How do we get out of this inbox deluge and really start to get somebody's attention?
well, a couple of things. So, a lot of speakers don't know how to find opportunities outside of where they can touch and where they're already. One of the reasons we started Speakers Need to Speak in 2019 is what I realized was a lot of speakers were just hopping from one event to another event. And while events, speaking begets speaking, like every time I'm speaking somewhere, I typically will get another opportunity to speak. someone in the audience, another speaker, the event host. It opens up doors for more speaking. But if that's the only way you're getting additional speaking opportunities, you're never really kind of rippling out. And a lot of speakers just don't know how to find other great speaking opportunities. So, a couple of tips for finding speaking opportunities. One, use your past calendar to find your future speaking events. Pull out your calendar from last year, the year before. If you attended a great event, if you spoke at a great event, if you were a vendor, if you heard about a great event in the past, reach out and find out when their next event is. Find out if you should be an attendee before you get to take the stage. But use the past to stay connected and find new opportunities. To your network. You're probably already connected to great opportunities. So we have our clients make a list of every connection that they have. Facebook groups, Chamber of Commerce, your alumni association, your kids' PTO, like literally all the places where you're already connected. Divide that list by 12 and once a month go through a portion of that list and just reach out. And when you reach out cold, the one question is, do you take outside speakers? Allow them to then enter the conversation. And if they say no, you might follow up with, do you take speakers? Is there a membership or is there a requirement? Like you can go a little deeper, or they may tell you we don't take outside speakers, but we do take members. Great. What does membership look like? Or you're going to find out they do take speakers and you're in the conversation. What I see as a big mistake is when I get an email in my inbox completely uninitiated and it's 3 pages full of all about that speaker and what they've done and their speaker one sheet and an excerpt from their book and the links to their website and their links to this and their links to that, basically giving me homework to do in order to connect with them. Wait until you're asked to deliver some of that. Start the conversation first. So that's a couple of ways that you can find speaking opportunities. Another great one is collaborations. You know, it just starts the conversation better when there's a win-win. And there's so many opportunities for collaborations. So in your travels, listen for those who serve the same audience, but in a different way. Or listen to those who do what you do, but serve a different audience. Either way, there's an opportunity for you to collaborate where you might be able to provide some value with someone who does something similar. You may pass on opportunities to each other. Or if you both serve the same audience, maybe you can do something collaboratively to serve the same audience, but in different ways. You do workshops together. You can reciprocate with your podcast. You can do a workshop together. You can share great opportunities with each other. So speaking is not a solo sport by any stretch of the imagination. And the more you try to make it that way and make it about you only, really the less results you're going to get.
That's powerful. And the deeper this is, you just illustrated the process of how some of these things take multiple years and having lots of opportunities. I think the ability to be willing to think about how you can add value to somebody is a really interesting muscle to exercise. And I find a lot of people have blockages around this, around meeting planners, or maybe it's a podcaster or somebody with a really high social media presence. And they just, their first thought is, well, if I don't have as many followers as them, how could I possibly add value? But if you start to think of the many different ways that you could help or create or support somebody, like Seth Godin, for example, somebody I've admired. I've read many of his books and I've done a bunch of things. He was coming out with a new podcast sometime 6 or 7 years ago. And I knew that he'd be particularly excited about it. And I wrote a blog post talking about the podcast or the lessons that I learned from the podcast. And if I would have written a blog post about any other one of Seth Godin's books, nobody, especially Seth, or probably wouldn't have cared that much. But since it was about his new thing, it was able to get his attention, and he left a comment on it. And we had a little email chain going for a little while. I didn't have the strategy to really carry it into something more. But there's such an opportunity and creativity available in collaboration. And that's one of my favorite things about content marketing, as much as it is serving the audience, but in developing and facilitating relationships for me.
Yeah, there really are so many opportunities to collaborate today, and what's in it for everyone. And I have long said, as an event producer, my goal is always the win-win-win. The audience, the host, and then me and my team as well, or whatever, whoever is supporting, is everybody getting what they need, out of this experience. And collaboration is, where 1+1 doesn't equal 2, but 1+1 can be exponentially larger. We like 1+1 that equals 11 rather than +2. So how can you serve that audience? And then keeping in mind, what benefit do you want from that experience? A lot of times I'll meet a new speaker and I hear, I want to get paid to speak. Okay. Why? Well, because I've been doing speaking opportunities for free, or I've been paying to speak and I'm not making enough money. I want to get paid to speak. Well, first off, it tells me that those pathways of speaking for free to get leads, or speaking and probably paying for the opportunity to sell from a stage, you probably weren't maximizing those if you weren't getting the results you were looking for. And getting paid to speak is a great pathway, but can sometimes be the least amount of money based on your value. And it's because of that lack of understanding that you brought up earlier in this conversation. If you don't understand those 3 different pathways of monetizing your message, if you're looking to get paid to speak, many speakers think, well, it's the value I'm bringing the audience. No, it's the value you're bringing the entity writing a check that you're monetizing. The value you're bringing the audience is almost a given or taken for granted that you're going to bring value to the audience. But what you're really going for is, what's the value that you're going to bring to the association or organization, institution, or probably industry specific event, where they can pay you to speak to their members or their clients or their employees. So you've got to show that value. You've got to understand who is your client. And if you're getting paid to speak, the audience is not your client. The person writing the check is your client. And so you need to go about getting that opportunity differently. And if you're only extolling the virtues of what you're going to bring the audience, and you don't tie that to the value that you're going to bring the entity writing the check, you're probably not going to get that opportunity. And I'll give a quick example for your audience.
Yeah.
If you're a health and wellness expert, to go in and speak to a corporation, to their employees about, how to sit at their desk more ergonomically, or get in exercise, or lose weight, or have better health and wellness, or better mental health in the workplace, all super valuable. But you want to show that corporation where they're going to have employees with fewer sick days and less turnover and more employee retention. Now you're speaking their language and you're more likely to get that opportunity. And if you're speaking for free, or you're speaking to get leads, you're going to get paid after you take the stage. So do you have a system, and do you have a structure? Are you following up with those leads? Do you have programs, products, and services to offer those leads in order to monetize that opportunity? The speaking engagement may be free, but I make money every single time I step on the stage, and I get paid before, during, or after. Don't mix up those pathways, or you might not get the results you're looking for. So when you're going down that pathway, make sure you know what you're doing with those leads, and you have systems and processes that'll help you make money. And if you're selling from the stage, please have experience selling in a one-on-one conversation, because it is very difficult to do from the stage to effectively sell to an audience and overcome their objections and show them the value and what you're offering, and literally ask them to do business with you right now by taking out a credit card. If you haven't had a similar conversation one-on-one where you're able to listen and ask questions, because it's from that listening and from the asking questions and really knowing your audience and really knowing your buyer that will allow you to have success from the stage to make an offer to many. Because the same objections that someone sitting in front of you by themselves has, your audience now has the moment you make an offer. And you need to have all of those conversations simultaneously, because they're having conversations in their head while you're speaking. And so it's important to know the industry. It's important to know the kind of speaking opportunities. It's important to get good at what you're looking to do so you get the results that you're looking for. And then the sky's the limit. I don't think there's anything better than speaking at events to grow your business and make massive impact.
Yeah. I'd love to transition into some story creation for you. And what I've gathered and gleaned about the perfect people for speakers need to speak is, first, they're not getting on enough stages, obviously. They're not getting the results when they are on those stages, and they're spending a lot of time and energy on the wrong opportunities, or they're not making the most of those opportunities. Does that sound like kind of the top three things?
Ding, 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 ding.
In that case, do you remember a specific time where you were frustrated not being able to get quite on the stage as you want? You understood this world well, but I'm sure there were some bumps in the road, or sometimes you made mistakes along the way, or when you found yourself like at a speak to sell event and you're like, I actually have no business being here right now. Do you have a specific one of those moments?
Yep, and this one came with a hefty price tag. So when I first started speaking, I was focused on being an event producer. And to that point, I had predominantly sold my event services via proposal and very custom, very one-on-one. And I decided that I was going to start offering this, in a more of a group setting. I was going to create a course. So no one so you all could plan your own events. You would know what I know. You would have kind of my methodology and my philosophy to producing a good event. And I broke it down to the 6 steps, the end in mind. It must make dollars and cents, logical logistics, marketing, not mayhem, execute with excellence, and don't brief the debrief. So I organized it all. I had this course created. I paid for a sponsorship. I was going to sell my course from the stage. So I shared all this, and no one bought the course. What happened was I ended up in conversation with people who said, thank you for that great information. And what I realized is I don't want to do all that, but can we hire you to do all that? So it led to more done for you clients. I mean, fortunately, I recouped my investment, but I spent nearly $10,000 for that speaking opportunity. I had spent $10,000 or $15,000 to create that course and the videos and all of that work that I'd done. But I also discovered something else in that process. The event side of what I do is very much about being in the right place at the right time and working with a client who is far enough along that understands the value of an event and wanting some services, whether they're looking to have a summit or an enrollment event, but not so far along that they don't already have a relationship with an event producer. So specific in the timing that if that's my front door, speaking can be a little bit challenging. Are the right people in the room? Is it the right time for them? But one of the things that I discovered and thought about is all of my event clients are speakers. And as we were matching speakers into the events we were producing, I was creating this directory of my own that I would draw upon when my event clients or we needed speakers. And speakers were coming back and saying, "Can I have another?" Mm-hmm. And when enough people ask you the same question, it's a good idea to take a look at what's really the problem and can I solve it? And I realized if I started serving speakers where speakers were at and helping them navigate the event world, when those speakers were ready to have their own event, I already have a relationship with them. So I shifted my front door, which allowed me to take more stages with greater ease, open that net wider, serve more speakers at a higher level, and guide them into being great event clients. So was that an expensive lesson? It was at one point, but the lesson led me to other lessons that have led to an incredible business. So the lesson for the audience here is, one, it's a good idea to know what people want before you create something. Good to ask some questions. And don't be afraid to be flexible. How do you get in front of the right people? Who are the right people for you to be sharing your message with? Sometimes just a little bit of a pivot will put you right in front of your ideal audience.
Have you shared this story from the stage a lot?
I have a few times, yeah.
A few times, cool. Yeah, I see such opportunity within it to really expose or have that speaker at the right point. May I try and interpret and retell this story for you?
I'd love for you to. I hear you're quite good at this.
Thank you. All I hear is silence after I make my offer. They seemed like they loved everything I had to say. Their heads were nodding. Everyone seemed engaged. And I just presented the result of so much work, a course that I had been building with my blood, sweat, and tears for so long, containing all of my brilliance. And I knew that this was going to be the way up for me. I was going to tell people how to run events, how to do these events. And I was breaking it down in painstaking detail in all of the ways that I've created so much success for on the stage in front of this audience. And I gave what I was certain was my best information, my heart and soul, all of the right things. And I'm a speaker at this time. I know what I'm doing. And it was in that silence of nobody moving, of everybody staring back at me, that I realized that being a great speaker takes a lot more than having a great talk. First of all, after seeing this audience, they're the wrong people. They weren't the right people for this offer. And it would take them coming up to me and saying, you make this look too hard. I would just want to pay you to do that. And realized I'd been offering the wrong thing. I had been at the wrong kind of event. I had paid thousands of dollars for a sponsorship spot that I wasn't even prepared to make any kind of offer. And you know what? The way that I was showing up at that event, usually when I get invited to speak at more places, I wasn't getting invited back. I had created the wrong opportunities. I thought I had done everything right. And still I ended up in the wrong room at the wrong time with the wrong strategy. And it was in that moment that I realized I needed to do something different. And I did want to help speakers and event planners, and I wanted to help them connect them more. And I began to see that there was more of a process to this than being able to deliver a great talk. But there was a way of being a great speaker that changed how you operated before, during, and after the stage. That considered more than just who was in your audience, but what the room was about and who was really running that room. And I realized in that moment that this methodology could help so many more speakers other than myself. And over the course of a few years and a lot of costly and painful mistakes, I saw the audiences change in the rooms that I was creating and finding myself in to people that were more aligned. I was booking events that I was certain I was going to get paid before, during, or after. And it was just a matter of details and figuring that out. And I knew that I could run my business as a speaker with and getting my message out into the world. And that's what I'm here to teach you about today.
I love it.
Thank you.
So good.
I think it's there's so much opportunity within those kind of moments to really lay out and speak what our client is thinking in a way that a lot of the times when we've lived and experienced our stories so many times, we only have morals of our stories and lessons for ourselves, when there could be, with a slightly different lens and distance, an ability to reframe these in a much more powerful way.
Oh, I love it. And for me, the saving grace was to go back to that same event with our Speakers Need to Speak offer about a year later, and similar room, many of the same people, and they rushed to the back of the room because I found what they actually needed from me and delivered.
Oh, yeah. Well, then, if I had known about that, I would have.
I know. Well, I didn't share that with you. Next time,
okay.
I left out that good stuff.
That's actually, it's a part that most people miss, and I guess I made that mistake too, to share kind of the happy ending and you living it out. And I love that you would go back to the same place, and within a few small changes, not even to what you said, but how you thought, made probably millions in difference, or especially over the course of many ideas and many stages. Yeah. Well, that is amazing, and we're just about out of time. So where can we go to learn more about you, to connect with you? And do you have any closing thoughts for us today?
Well, one of the easiest ways to connect with us is speakergigs.com. And there's actually two things on that site. One, if you're an event host and you're looking for great speakers, you can connect with us by telling us about your event, and we'll match you to our incredible speakers. If you're a speaker looking for more opportunities, click the other button, tell us about you, and we'll connect you depending on what you're looking for. So speakergigs.com, super easy to remember. You can connect with this with there. And of course, on social media, there aren't too many Danella Burnett's in the world. So find me on most social media, Danella Burnett and Speakers Need to Speak. And final thoughts, get out there. I know that part of my legacy is going to be the number of people that I have lifted up onto that stage and kept out on stages so that they can impact other people. Because there are people going to bed tonight with more month than money, not in a great relationship. Maybe it's not a great relationship with the person in the mirror. They're looking to lose weight. They're looking to grow their businesses. They're looking to be better parents. They're looking to further their education. They're looking, and many of them are looking up at the ceiling at 3:00 in the morning. They're looking for you. So get visible, take the stage, get on the right stage in front of those people that you can help, and help them and make a ton of money while you're doing it. because you deserve it, they deserve it, and the world is made better by the impact and the income that good people can make.
Love it. Danella, thank you so much for joining us.